What happens when an ordinary boy like Alex Bennett places kindness above all else, even when it means sacrificing time, responsibilities, and facing misunderstandings? This is a touching story about the power of compassion, where a small act of kindness amidst life's relentless pace can spark extraordinary change. On this journey, Alex not only learns how to help others, but also discovers the profound value of sharing, sacrifice, and the true meaning of empathy. This tale reminds us that sometimes the simplest choices are the seeds that cultivate goodness in the world. Step into Alex's life and witness how his kindness spreads like ripples, transforming the lives of those around him and his own. Feel the extraordinary strength of compassion and its power to shape our lives and the world for the better. Late in the afternoon, the golden rays of the setting sun filtered through the trees lining a busy street, casting pale yellow streaks across the sidewalk. The street, already bustling, seemed even livelier with the sound of honking horns, conversations, and hurried footsteps. Amidst the commotion, Alex Bennett walked quickly through the crowd, his backpack bouncing gently with each hurried step. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, the group project he had just completed, his mother's reminders, and the important family dinner that awaited him that evening. Having just left school, Alex was making his way home, his legs moving instinctively, as if aware of the mounting pressure of time. The phone in his hand vibrated softly, signaling a new message. Glancing at the screen, Alex read the text from his mother. "Hurry back, everyone's waiting. Don't be late." He let out a sigh, his chest tightening slightly with guilt. "I should have left earlier," he muttered to himself, stealing a quick glance at his wristwatch. The minute hand was inching dangerously close to the 5 o'clock mark. There were still several blocks to go, and the path ahead resembled a maze teeming with cars and pedestrians. The constant honking of horns from the adjacent road blended with the hurried footsteps of the crowd. Tightening the straps of his backpack, Alex quickened his pace. But then, his steps abruptly halted. A sight near the corner of the sidewalk, by the entrance of a bustling shopping center, caught his eye. An elderly woman, small and frail, her short silver hair neatly cropped, was struggling to pick up oranges scattered across the ground. A large bag lay toppled beside her, with a few others still piled nearby. The passers-by moved briskly, seemingly oblivious to her plight, each preoccupied with their own lives. Alex stood frozen, his gaze fixed on the trembling figure of the woman. Her thin, shaky hands reached for each orange, never stopping despite their apparent weakness. Occasionally, her weary eyes would lift to observe the passing crowd, filled with a mix of exhaustion and disappointment, before returning to the task at hand. An internal battle raged within Alex. "I need to get home. Mama's waiting, but she needs help," he thought, biting his lip as his eyes darted once again to his watch. The ticking hands mocked him, each second slipping away like grains of sand in an hourglass. Part of him wanted to move on, to leave the scene behind, but another part felt anchored by the woman's desperate expression. At that moment, the elderly woman bent lower to retrieve an orange that had rolled just beyond her reach. Her body wavered precariously, nearly toppling over. Alex couldn't bear it any longer. Taking a deep breath to steel himself, he pushed aside his worries and approached her quickly. "Let me help you," he said, his voice slightly unsteady with urgency. The woman looked up, her eyes wide with surprise and tinged with gratitude. Clearly, she hadn't expected anyone to stop for her amid the sea of indifference. "Oh, thank you, dear. You're so kind," she replied, her voice trembling, but sincere. Alex knelt down, swiftly gathering the scattered oranges with careful hands. He placed them back into the toppled bag, his movements efficient yet gentle. His eyes flickered toward the woman occasionally, as if to reassure himself that she was all right. The world around them seemed to slow down. The cacophony of horns, voices, and hurried breaths of the city faded into the background. At that moment, Alex was entirely focused on helping her. Once he had collected all the oranges, Alex asked softly, "Do you need help carrying your bags?" The woman nodded, a faint smile gracing her tired face. "Could you help me take them to the parking lot across the street? This bag is too heavy for me to carry." Alex hesitated briefly. His gaze traveled down the long street ahead and then back to his watch. But when his eyes met her worn, grateful face, the uncertainty within him dissolved. Smiling faintly, he nodded. Of course. Let me help you. What should have been a short trip to the parking lot felt significantly longer. The heavy bag weighed on Alex's arms as the elderly woman walked slowly beside him, occasionally pausing to catch her breath. Each time she stopped, Alex waited patiently, without a word of complaint. During the walk, the woman began to talk, her voice quiet but warm. It's rare to meet someone as kind as you these days. I just bought a few gifts for my grandson. Poor thing, his parents are always busy. I'm so thankful you stopped to help. I wouldn't have managed on my own. Alex nodded along, though his mind was restless. The ticking of his watch seemed louder, a constant reminder of the time slipping away. He resisted the urge to glance at it again, but couldn't shake the gnawing anxiety in his chest. Finally, they reached the parking lot. The woman fumbled with her thick coat, searching through its pockets for her keys. Her frail hands trembled as she rummaged, checking each compartment but coming up empty. Where did you put your keys, ma'am? Can I help you look? Alex offered, his concern evident in his voice. No, it's all right. I'm sure they're here somewhere, she replied, continuing her search. The minutes dragged on. The street lights began to flicker to life, casting a dim golden glow over the now quiet parking lot. Just as Alex's patience was wearing thin, the woman exclaimed, "Ah, here they are! I found them!" She quickly unlocked the trunk, and Alex helped her lift the heavy bag inside. When everything was finally in place, the woman turned to Alex, taking his hand in hers. Her eyes shimmered with deep gratitude. "Thank you so much, dear. You are a wonderful young man," she said, her voice quivering with emotion. Alex forced a small smile, bowing slightly before turning to leave. His steps quickened as he made his way back down the sidewalk, the sound of his shoes merging with the evening's growing silence. Despite his rush, a lingering unease weighed on him. Did I make the right choice, he wondered. Yet the memory of the woman's relieved smile and grateful eyes brought him a sense of quiet satisfaction. As Alex disappeared into the night, the streetlights reflected off his face, illuminating a young boy with a heart full of kindness. Alex stood at the front door breathless, his chest heaving as his trembling hand reached for the doorknob. The faint creak of wood echoed as the door swung open, revealing the golden glow of the chandelier illuminating the living room. Yet the warmth of the light did little to dispel the heavy tension hanging in the air. David Bennett, Alex's father, sat in the large armchair, his hands resting firmly on the armrests, his posture brimming with restrained authority. His eyes, lit with quiet disappointment, burned like a slow ember ready to ignite. Across the room, Laura, Alex's mother, stood with arms crossed, her expression cold and unyielding. On the sofa, Sophie, Alex's younger sister, sat curled up, her wide eyes fixed on her brother, with a mix of worry and curiosity. "Where have you been?" His mother's voice cut through the silence, sharp as a blade. Alex froze mid-step, the weight of his guilt making every movement feel sluggish. He lowered his gaze, his hand tightening instinctively around the strap of his backpack. His father's piercing stare bore into him, heavy and unrelenting, leaving the words he wanted to say trapped in his throat. "Do you even know what time it is?" his father demanded, his voice low but each word hitting like a hammer. "We've been waiting for over 30 minutes. This is an important family dinner, Alex. You can't just do whatever you please." Alex began, his voice barely above a whisper. Swallowing hard, he summoned the courage to explain, "I stopped to help an elderly woman carry her groceries." The words fell into the room like a pebble breaking the surface of still water. The room grew so quiet that Alex could hear the steady tick of the clock on the wall. His father sighed heavily, running a hand over his face, a gesture that only deepened the lines of disappointment etched there. "Helping others is good," his father said, his eyes locking onto Alex's. But there was no warmth or encouragement in his gaze, only an icy undercurrent of frustration. "But you need to learn to prioritize. Family comes first. Always. Other people can handle themselves." Laura stepped forward, her voice softer than David's, but no less tinged with reproach. "Your father is right, Alex. We're not upset that you wanted to help someone, but you need to think about the consequences. We've all been waiting for you. This dinner is important, and you've made us late." Alex stood in the middle of the room, the weight of their words pressing down on him. He glanced up at his parents, his expression a mixture of confusion and hurt. He hadn't anticipated this kind of reaction to what he thought was the right thing to do. I just wanted to do the right thing, he thought, but the words wouldn't come out. I'm sorry, he finally said, his voice shaky and subdued. His eyes fell to his mud-splattered sneakers, as if they could shield him from the sharp sting of his parents' disapproval. Silence descended over the room once more. Alex cast a quick glance at Sophie. She sat motionless, her small frame almost swallowed by the sofa cushions. Yet her eyes held a faint flicker of understanding that momentarily eased Alex's turmoil. But as the image of the elderly woman resurfaced in his mind, the frail, trembling hands and the weary yet grateful smile, an ache of guilt tightened its grip on him. Had he been wrong to stop and help her? The ticking clock grew louder, a relentless reminder of the minutes slipping away before the dinner. David rose to his feet, his voice cutting through the room like a command. Get in the car. Now, we're already late. No one argued. They all moved with a quiet urgency, the tension thick and stifling. Alex trailed behind his parents as they filed out, his heart heavy with a mixture of doubt and regret. As the family stepped into the dim evening light, the oppressive silence hung over them like a storm that hadn't quite passed. Under the streetlight's faint glow, Alex couldn't stop the question gnawing at the edges of his mind. Was doing the right thing worth the disappointment he had caused his family? The car sped down the road bathed in golden light, leaving behind rows of silent trees under the twilight sky. Inside, the air was heavy with urgency and tension, pressing down on everyone. David Bennett gripped the steering wheel tightly, his sharp gaze fixed on the road ahead. His foot pressed hard on the accelerator, propelling the car faster through the intersection. We can't be late, David said curtly, his voice gruff, barely above a growl. Laura Bennett, seated in the passenger seat, turned to look at her husband. Her hand clutched the door handle, her face etched with worry. David, please, can't you slow down? Be careful, she pleaded. David glanced briefly at Laura but made no effort to ease his speed. How can I slow down? He snapped. We're already late. What will everyone think if we show up last to the dinner? From the back seat, 9-year-old Sophie Bennett shrank into her seat, her wide eyes darting nervously toward the window as the car tilted slightly on a sharp turn. Dad, you're driving too fast, she said softly, her voice trembling. Her eyes flitted toward her mother, seeking reassurance. Laura turned back to David, her tone now sharper, stripped of restraint. Did you hear what Sophie said? Please don't make this more stressful for everyone. David clenched his jaw, his frustration barely contained, but he eased off the gas slightly. The car seemed to slow down, if only a fraction, but the oppressive tension remained thick in the cabin. In the back seat, Alex sat silently, his eyes fixed on the scenery flashing past the window. The glow of the streetlights flickered across his face, highlighting the mix of regret and unease in his expression. His hand gripped the strap of his backpack tightly on his lap, and his head dipped lower with each replay of his parents' reprimands. Why did I make us late? He chastised himself inwardly. His father's stern demeanor and his mother's disappointed tone looped endlessly in his mind, each repetition driving the weight of guilt deeper. If only I'd gone straight home, Alex thought quietly, the sinking feeling in his chest making him feel like the root of the entire problem. Alex, are you okay? Sophie's small voice broke the silence, tinged with concern. Alex lifted his head, forcing a weak smile onto his face. I'm fine, he replied, though the turbulence in his heart betrayed his words. Laura glanced over her shoulder at Alex, her expression softening but still carrying an undercurrent of reproach. Alex, she said gently, I know you wanted to do the right thing, but next time think about the timing, okay? Doing good isn't always right if it comes at someone else's expense. Alex gave a small nod, but he didn't respond. David pressed the accelerator again, this time without interruption. We're almost there. Everyone, get ready, he said tersely. The tension hung heavy as the car surged forward, leaving no room for further conversation. Alex sat back in his seat, his thoughts tangled in doubt and remorse. The glow of the approaching lights ahead barely pierced through the weight pressing on him. The car moved toward its destination, but for Alex, the journey felt like an endless loop of guilt and unanswered questions. The banquet hall sparkled under the glow of crystal chandeliers, its atmosphere alive with laughter, conversation, and the gentle melody of background music. As the Bennett family stepped inside, a wave of attention swept over them, the guests' eyes turning toward the late arrivals. The host's expression briefly flickered with displeasure before he quickly replaced it with a polite smile, stepping forward to greet them. "David, Laura, you've made it at last," he said, his tone friendly, but laced with subtle reproach. David Bennett nodded, tugging at his tie as he offered a sheepish smile. "Apologies for our delay. Actually, it was my son, Alex, who stopped to help an elderly woman with her bags." The surrounding chatter faded abruptly. A few nearby guests turned their attention to Alex, their gazes a mix of curiosity and surprise. An older woman with silver hair approached, her kind smile radiating warmth. "That's very kind of you," she said, her eyes filled with admiration as they met Alex's. "It's rare to see children and do such things these days." "I'm sure the woman you helped was deeply grateful." Alex lowered his head slightly, a faint warmth stirring in his chest, but the momentary comfort was shattered by a cold voice cutting through the room from the other side. "Kindness is one thing," a middle-aged man said evenly, his voice calm but pointed. "But kindness needs to be timely and appropriate. If it makes your entire family late, is it really worth it?" The atmosphere grew taut, the energy in the room palpable. Some guests nodded in agreement, while others remained silent, watching the scene unfold. Alex's head sank lower, his hand clutching the strap of his backpack as though it were a lifeline. Breaking the tension, Nathaniel, the host's son, appeared. His neatly tailored suit and perfectly combed hair made him look older than his years. His eyes gleamed with amusement, and a smug grin curled at his lips as he surveyed Alex. "So you were late to the party because you helped some old lady," Nathaniel drawled, his voice dripping with mockery. "What did she give you in return? A thank you?" Alex said nothing, his head bowing even further under the weight of the words. The sharp edges of Nathaniel's tone seemed to etch themselves into Alex's sense of dignity. But Nathaniel wasn't finished. "What a waste of time," he continued, turning to his group of friends nearby. "If it were me, I wouldn't have spent a second on something like that." People can take care of themselves, can't they? Laughter erupted from Nathaniel's group, each chuckle slicing through Alex like icy needles. His grip on his backpack tightened, his gaze fixed firmly on the floor. He wanted to speak up, to explain that the woman genuinely needed help, that he couldn't have just walked away, but the words clung stubbornly to the back of his throat. Shame and confusion churned within him. The belief in kindness that had once felt so solid now felt fragile, exposed to ridicule and judgment from those who couldn't or wouldn't understand. Alex felt as though he were sinking into a deep, dark void of self-doubt and isolation. "Think about it next time," Nathaniel added with a nonchalant shrug before turning on his heel and walking away. The sound of Nathaniel's laughter, joined by his friends, lingered in the air, clinging to Alex like an unwanted shadow. He stood there, paralyzed by the weight of countless stares, sharp and unrelenting. Alex's hands clenched the straps of his backpack as he fought to maintain his composure amidst the lively crowd. Around him, the music and laughter continued, the warm glow of the chandeliers still dazzling. But to Alex, it all felt hollow, a masquerade hiding something insincere. He felt out of place, as though he didn't belong. "I just want this party to end," he thought bitterly, his gaze dropping further to avoid every eye aimed in his direction. In the days that followed, Alex's life returned to its usual rhythm, like a serene river flowing without disturbance. Each morning, the sound of the school bell signaling the end of classes rang out, sending clusters of students spilling out of their classrooms. The hallways quickly filled with the buzz of laughter, hurried footsteps, and animated conversations. Alex blended into the stream of people, his backpack slung over his shoulder, his eyes glancing at friends chatting excitedly around him. On the basketball court, the sound of shoes scuffing against the concrete and teammates calling out for passes echoed through the open space. Alex passed the ball to a teammate and swiftly moved into position to receive it back. When his team scored, cheers erupted and hands clapped together in celebration. A faint smile appeared on Alex's face as he watched the ball roll lazily across the court, savoring the brief moments of relaxation amidst the lively atmosphere. After games, Alex often stayed behind, sitting on the steps by the court, listening to his friends' conversations about upcoming matches or newly released movies. The late afternoon sun filtered through the tall trees, casting soft golden rays onto the nearby benches. Alex tilted his head back to gaze at the sky, the peaceful ambiance wrapping around him like a gentle embrace, inviting him to linger just a little longer before returning to unfinished schoolwork. In the library, Alex and his group of friends gathered around a large table. Thick textbooks lay open, illuminated by the warm yellow glow of an overhead lamp. Occasionally, a friend would turn to Alex with a question about a challenging math problem. He would answer succinctly, pointing to the solution in their notes, helping them find the answer. The rhythmic flipping of pages, the soft tapping of pencils against the table, and the occasional quiet giggles from other corners of the library created a soothing cadence Alex found comforting. At the end of each day, as the house lights came on, Alex and his family gathered around the dinner table. The aroma of his mother's cooking filled the room, enveloping everyone in its warmth. Sophie, his younger sister, animatedly recounted a new game she had learned at school, her eyes shining with excitement. Alex smiled as he reached for the bowl of soup his mother passed to him, listening to the conversations his parents exchanged. Everything unfolded gently, with the familiar ease of routines etched into daily life. Occasionally, Alex took walks around the small neighborhood near his home. The brick-paved streets, worn smooth by countless footsteps, still carried a comforting familiarity. Streetlights cast a golden glow onto old walls, the rustling wind stirred the leaves of roadside trees, and the scattered sounds of the city at night brought Alex a sense of calm. Late at night, when the house had fallen silent, Alex sat at his desk. The light from his lamp bathed the small room in a cozy warmth. With pen in hand, he wrote steadily in his notebook. The chirping of insects outside the window blended with the gentle rhythm of the house at rest. Closing his notebook, Alex looked out the window at the expansive night sky, where stars twinkled faintly. These peaceful days passed without much fanfare, yet each moment lingered in Alex's mind like small fragments of a greater mosaic, weaving a picture of quiet serenity and contentment. The basketball court buzzed with energy in the late afternoon, filled with laughter and the rhythmic pounding of the ball on the pavement. Alex sprinted toward the hoop, gripping the ball tightly before suddenly passing it sideways to a teammate amidst the cheers of his friends. "Great pass, Alex," someone shouted, but he only responded with a faint smile, his focus still fixed on the game. Then, an errant shot sent the ball careening off the court. It rolled quickly toward the narrow road beyond. Without hesitation, Alex darted after it, his feet skimming the edge of the court before cutting across the crease toward the road. The ball continued to roll until it finally came to rest near an old, worn car parked at the curb. Bending down to pick it up, Alex's attention was drawn to a man leaning under the car's raised hood. The man, likely in his 40s, wore a dark, oil-stained shirt, his hair disheveled and damp with sweat. Alex could hear him muttering indistinctly as he worked a large wrench with practiced but frustrated movements. "Need some help, sir?" Alex asked hesitantly, his tone friendly but unsure. The man straightened up, surprised to see Alex standing there with the basketball in hand. He furrowed his brow before quickly returning to the engine. "Car's broken down. Needs to be pushed to the parking lot up ahead," the man said curtly. Alex glanced around. The parking lot was only a few meters away, but the road sloped upward, making the task far from easy. He could see the strain in the man's expression as he had unsuccessfully tried to push the car alone. Without hesitation, Alex set the basketball down by the curb and stepped closer. "Let me help you push." The man gave Alex a quick glance, shrugged, and turned his attention back to the car. Alex moved to the rear, positioning himself firmly against the trunk. "Ready when you are," Alex called out. "All right, push." The car began to move slowly, its tires squeaking against the asphalt. Alex pushed with all his strength, his sneakers slipping slightly on the road. He gritted his teeth and dug his heels in, determined to keep the car moving. Up front, the man steered, guiding the vehicle toward the lot. "Almost there. Keep going," Alex urged, his voice breathless, his back drenched in sweat. At last, the car rolled into a space in the small parking lot and came to a halt. The man released the steering wheel and straightened up, brushing his hands off as though the effort had been nothing. Alex leaned against the back of the car, exhaling heavily as he tried to catch his breath. A faint smile flickered across his face, a quiet sense of satisfaction washing over him. But when he looked up, the man had already rounded the car, slamming the hood shut with a loud clang before walking away. "Hey, is your car working now?" Alex called out. The man paused briefly, glancing back with a hurried, distracted look. "Yeah, thanks," he muttered, before turning away and continuing on his way, barely acknowledging Alex. Alex stood still, his arms hanging limply at his sides, a strange coldness settling in his chest despite the heat of his exertion. The sweat on his brow dried quickly, but the chill in his heart lingered longer. The man disappeared from sight, leaving behind the old car and a young boy standing quietly by the roadside. Alex shook his head slightly, bending down to retrieve the basketball lying at the curb. A hollow feeling crept into him, like a whisper of doubt. He didn't even bother to say anything meaningful, Alex thought, his emotions caught somewhere between disbelief and disappointment. As he returned to the court, the familiar sound of his friends calling his name and their excited cheers filled the air. But to Alex, everything now seemed muted, like the world had dimmed somehow. He stopped at the edge of the court, holding the basketball tightly, his gaze distant as it drifted back to the parking lot, where the old car sat lifeless and still. Taking a deep breath, Alex rejoined the game, forcing himself to focus. Yet, a quiet question began to form in his mind, small but persistent. Does kindness really matter if no one cares? That afternoon, the schoolyard buzzed with chatter and laughter. Alex sat with his friends on a long bench under the shade of a tree, holding the lunchbox his mother had packed for him. Beside him, Dylan was munching on a sandwich, talking animatedly despite his full mouth. "Hey, did you guys hear? Our class is playing against 8A next week in basketball. We're totally going to win," Dylan announced, brimming with confidence. "No way," another friend interjected. "I heard 8A has Jason, and he's a total beast at shooting hoops." The group burst into laughter, everyone chiming in with their own remarks, each trying to outdo the other. Alex listened quietly, occasionally nodding, but his mind was still preoccupied with what had happened recently. After a moment of hesitation, he spoke up, his voice uncertain. "You know, the other day I helped this guy push his broken-down car to the parking lot. But the thing is, he didn't even thank me. Just said a couple of words and left." Dylan, the loudest of the group, immediately perked up. "Seriously? Then why'd you even bother helping him?" "Well, I thought he needed help, so I helped him," Alex replied, his gaze flickering nervously as the group turned their attention to him. Without warning, Dylan burst into laughter. "Alex, you're such a saint. But come on, what did you get out of it? You went out of your way and got snubbed for it. If it were me, I'd have walked away. No thanks, no effort." A few others started chuckling along with Dylan, not loudly but enough to make Alex feel uncomfortable. "That's not the point," Alex said, trying to explain. "I just thought it was the right thing to do." "The right thing?" Dylan raised an eyebrow skeptically. "Think about it. Who's genuinely kind these days? Everyone's just looking out for themselves. You help someone, but who cares? Being too nice only gets you hurt." The group erupted again, their laughter mingling with snippets of agreement. "Yeah, being too nice is just dumb. Everyone should just mind their own business, right?" Alex sat quietly, his lunchbox resting in his lap. Their words buzzed around him like an incessant noise, loud and grating, forcing him to reflect. But then, a younger girl sitting at the far end of the bench suddenly chimed in. "But, if no one's kind, wouldn't the world be kind of boring?" Everyone turned to look at her. Dylan laughed even harder. "Oh, please, you're dreaming, kid. The world doesn't need too many good people. Just enough to keep things running." Alex managed a faint, awkward smile. He didn't want to argue, but Dylan's words kept replaying in his mind. Being too nice only gets you hurt. The shrill sound of the bell signaling the end of lunch break cut through the air, prompting the group to rise and prepare for class. As Dylan passed Alex, he clapped him on the shoulder. "You've got to learn to tone it down, buddy. Don't try so hard to be nice, or you'll just end up a joke." Alex trailed behind the group, his steps heavier than usual. He knew Dylan wasn't trying to be cruel, but his words left a lingering sting, making Alex question himself. Looking up at the blue sky framed by the trees, Alex couldn't help but wonder, should I change? Rain poured relentlessly onto the city streets, where the pavement gleamed under the glow of streetlights. Skyscrapers loomed above, their glass facades reflecting the gray, stormy sky. Cars moved sluggishly, with water rushing over white lane markings, forming small streams that swirled along the road. Alex Bennett, his backpack weighing heavily on his shoulders, ran along the crowded sidewalk. His thin raincoat did little to shield him from the biting wind. His breath came in short gasps as his feet pounded the pristine pavement, water splashing up with every hurried step. Every glance at his watch made his heart tighten. His group presentation was set to begin in 40 minutes, and if he arrived late, weeks of hard work by his teammates would go to waste. The thought spurred him to run faster, ignoring the torrent of rain and the chill that seeped through his clothes. As he turned a corner, Alex abruptly skidded to a stop. Nearby, under a small, tattered umbrella, an elderly woman stood trembling, a small suitcase by her side. Her soaked coat clung to her frail frame, and her silver hair was plastered against her forehead by the rain. Her face bore an expression of panic as she looked helplessly at the unending flow of cars. Alex's heart skipped a beat. It was the same woman he had helped once before. He checked his watch again, 15 minutes. Time was slipping away, but the woman's desperate gaze held him in place, compelling him to act. Taking a deep breath, Alex approached her. "Do you need help, ma'am?" Alex asked hesitantly, his voice tinged with concern. The woman looked up, her face lighting up with relief when she recognized him. "It's you! Oh, thank heavens, you're here! God must have sent you to me." Alex managed a faint smile, but her words quickly grounded him in the urgency of the moment. "I need to get to the hospital," she said, her voice quivering. "A loved one is critically ill, but I can't drive in this rain. No taxi will stop. Please, can you help me call for one?" Alex glanced around and tried waving down several taxis, but none of the speeding cars slowed. Turning back to the woman, his expression betrayed his frustration. "It's hard to get a taxi in weather like this," he admitted. "How about you take the bus?" He pointed toward a nearby bus stop, where a few people huddled under a small awning. The woman shook her head, her eyes welling up. No, I don't know how to take the bus. I'm afraid I won't make it in time. Please, can you come with me? I'm begging you." Her plea echoed like a bell in Alex's heart. He stood frozen as cold raindrops streamed down his face. The thought of his group presentation, his teammates, and the teacher's judgment clashed with the image of the woman pleading for help. Each passing second stretched the tension inside him tighter, threatening to snap. His hand gripped his backpack strap as he lowered his head, raindrops pattering against his soaked shoes. "If I help her, I'll be late," he thought. "But she has no one else. What if it's too late?" Finally, Alex raised his head, his eyes filled with resolve. "I'll go with you," he said. The woman's face lit up with joy, her eyes shimmering as though she had just witnessed a miracle. "You're an angel sent by God," she exclaimed. Nodding, Alex led her toward the bus stop, his heart heavy, but knowing he couldn't do otherwise. The bus rattled slightly as it rolled through a large puddle. Inside, the air was chilly and damp, carrying the faint scent of wet clothes. Alex and the elderly woman sat close together on the pale green plastic seats, their coats still dripping water, leaving dark stains on the floor below. Without a word, Alex pulled some coins from his pocket to pay for their fares. His legs felt numb as water from his soaked backpack trickled down, but he barely noticed. "You're very kind," the woman said softly, her frail hand clasping his in gratitude. "Your family must be so proud of you." Alex smiled faintly but kept his eyes on the window. Outside, heavy raindrops pounded against the glass, forming streams that raced each other down its surface. Inside his head, a torrent of questions mirrored the rhythm of the rain. Will I make it on time? What will the teacher think? Will my group be angry with me? The woman leaned back slightly, her face relaxing as her earlier worry began to ease. "What's your name? Where do you go to school?" she asked, her tone warm and curious. "Alex, I'm in 9th grade, he replied automatically, his voice flat from distraction. "Alex, what a lovely name," the woman said, smiling fondly. "You must be a very diligent student. I bet everyone at school admires you." Alex gave a small nod but remained silent, his mind racing as he calculated how much time he had left and wondered how he could recover from this delay. "What about your family?" she continued gently, like a grandmother speaking to her grandchild. "Your parents must be so proud to have such a kind son." Alex forced a weak smile and muttered, "They're okay, I guess." Though she kept chatting, her words blurred into the background noise of rain and muffled conversations. Alex answered her questions on autopilot, but his thoughts had already drifted far away, consumed by his growing anxiety. The bus slowed to a stop near the hospital, jolting Alex back to reality. The woman leaned forward, her expression uncertain. "Is this the stop near the hospital?" Startled, Alex glanced at the sign and quickly nodded. "Yes, this is it. Follow me." Springing to his feet, he grabbed the woman's small suitcase and helped her off the bus, stepping out into the relentless rain. At the hospital entrance, the elderly woman clasped Alex's hands tightly, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you so much. You truly are an angel." Alex smiled and gave a small bow before turning and dashing toward the main road. Alex ran through the downpour, his feet splashing through icy streams that coursed down the streets. The roads resembled shallow rivers, with water reaching his ankles, making every step heavier and harder. His breath came in ragged bursts, blending with the constant roar of the rain. Soaked to the bone, Alex clenched the straps of his backpack, his legs straining as he pushed himself forward. Water sprayed with each step, but he didn't care. One thought pounded in his mind. "I have to make it. I can't be late." Cold winds whipped rain against his face, stinging like needles. He ducked his head, his eyes fixed on the path ahead, as he dodged slow-moving pedestrians and plowed through puddles without hesitation. His muscles burned, but he gritted his teeth and forced himself to keep going. Finally, through the gray haze, the school gates came into view. A spark of hope ignited in Alex's chest. Summoning his last reserves of strength, he surged forward, ignoring the pain in his legs. As he crossed the threshold of the gates, water sprayed in all directions, marking the boundary between despair and determination. The door burst open, startling the entire class. Alex stood there, drenched from head to toe, his breath coming in heaving gasps. The teacher turned toward him, her eyes narrowing in disapproval. "Where's your report?" she asked, her tone sharp. Alex pulled a damp stack of papers from his backpack, the ink smudged and the edges crumpled. Placing it on her desk, he kept his head bowed, avoiding her gaze. Whispers rippled through the room. "He ruined it," someone murmured. But as Alex stepped to the podium, he lifted his head high. His voice, steady and clear, filled the room. Slowly, his classmates leaned in, captivated. When he finished, applause erupted. The teacher nodded slightly. "Good work, but next time, be on time." Alex smiled, knowing that despite the cunt, he had done the right thing. One peaceful afternoon after school, Alex arrived home to find his mother holding a white envelope, a curious expression on her face. "Alex, this letter is for you," she said, handing it over. Alex took it eagerly and tore it open. The words on the paper froze him in place. It was an invitation from the elderly woman he had helped, twice, inviting his entire family to visit her over the weekend. Why would she invite us? Alex wondered aloud. As Alex recounted the two occasions he had helped the woman, once carrying her bags and the other time taking her to the hospital, his family listened with growing astonishment. His mother sighed and placed a hand on her forehead. "So that's why you were late the other day?" His father frowned, a mix of confusion and curiosity crossing his face. After some deliberation, his parents agreed to accept the invitation. "Fine, we'll go. Let's see what this is about," his father said gruffly. On the weekend, under a soft, golden sun, Alex and his family arrived at the elderly woman's home. The house was nestled in a quiet neighborhood, surrounded by a white picket fence and a small garden filled with golden chrysanthemums. Contrary to what they had imagined, the house wasn't grand or opulent. Instead, its simple interior radiated warmth and an indescribable coziness. The woman emerged from the living room, her small frame exuding energy and her bright eyes lighting up as she greeted them. "Welcome to my home," she said warmly, her smile inviting and genuine. The family gathered around a large wooden table. As they chatted, the elderly woman revealed a truth that left everyone stunned. She wasn't just an ordinary retiree. She was the founder of a major company, a successful entrepreneur who had chosen to live simply in her retirement to enjoy a life of peace. "You're a millionaire?" Alex's mother blurted out, her eyes wide with surprise. The woman chuckled. "Money doesn't bring happiness, but kindness does." Alex's parents flushed with embarrassment, recalling the times they had scolded Alex for being late because of helping her. Now all they could do was sit quietly, their expressions heavy with regret. The elderly woman raised her hand, signaling for someone to enter. A man in a tailored suit stepped into the room, carrying a sleek leather briefcase. He opened it to reveal another envelope. "The lady wishes to share a portion of her will," the man, her lawyer, announced. Alex's family exchanged bewildered glances, unsure of what was happening. Turning to Alex, the woman's gaze softened, her voice tender. "I've decided to gift you a scholarship for your university education. All expenses will be covered." The room fell into a stunned silence, so quiet that the faint whisper of wind brushing against the windows could be heard. Alex's parents were too shocked to speak. Why, why would you do this?" Alex's father finally asked, his voice thick with disbelief. The woman smiled, her eyes distant as if recalling an old memory. "Because I was once like Alex. I grew up in a poor family, constantly worrying about whether I'd ever have enough money to attend college. Then one day a stranger helped me, giving me the chance to change my life." She placed a gentle hand on Alex's shoulder, her voice trembling, but resolute. "Do you know, Alex, that small act of kindness, helping with my vow, then taking me to the hospital, reminded me of the kindness I once received. That's why I want to keep that flame alive by passing it on to you." Alex bowed his head, his eyes glistening with emotion. He hadn't imagined that his seemingly insignificant actions could touch someone's heart so profoundly. On the drive home, the car was filled with a quiet but profound sense of emotion. Alex's mother occasionally glanced back at him, her eyes brimming with pride. His father, though typically reserved, sighed deeply and patted Alex's shoulder. "You did the right thing, Alex. I'm proud of you," his father said. Staring out the window, Alex's gaze brightened as he recalled the woman's words. "Hold on to that kindness. It doesn't just help others, it makes the world a better place." Clutching his backpack tightly, Alex felt a renewed sense of determination. He knew that the road ahead would be lying and full of challenges, but kindness would always be the light guiding him forward. The car glided smoothly through the streets, illuminated by golden lights, their reflections shimmering on the rain-slicked roads in fleeting patterns. Inside, the silence seemed to embrace Alex's thoughts. He rested his head against the window, his gaze wandering aimlessly into the night outside. But instead of seeing the passing scenery, his mind was flooded with memories of the encounter earlier that evening. The image of the elderly woman sitting in her worn armchair, recounting her childhood struggles, played vividly in Alex's mind. Her words echoed, "When I was young, I feared I wouldn't overcome life's hardships. But the kindness of a stranger opened the door to a new life for me." He remembered her eyes, filled with profound gratitude and unwavering belief in the power of kindness. He thought of the 2 times he had helped her. The first, opening the car door and carrying her heavy bags. The second, guiding her to the hospital through the pouring rain. At the time, his actions were born from simple decency, devoid of any expectation of reward. But now, reflecting on it, Alex realized those small gestures had created a significant impact, not just for the elderly woman, but also for himself. One of her statements lingered in his mind, repeating like a gentle mantra, "No act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted." He could still hear her warm voice as she emphasized this truth, and in that moment, it felt as though a door had opened within his heart. Alex understood that kindness didn't have to be grand or elaborate. Even the simplest actions could leave an enduring mark on someone's life. His thoughts turned to the expressions of his parents during the meeting. Once, he had felt hurt by their scolding when he came home late after helping the woman. But today, he had seen pride and understanding in their eyes. Alex realized something deeper. Kindness doesn't just help others, it makes you a better person as well. He felt a newfound maturity and a clearer understanding of what it meant to live a life not solely for oneself. His hand instinctively brushed against the small pouch the elderly woman had given him. Inside were seeds she called seeds of kindness. Her words still rang in his ears. Sow kindness, and you will reap love. He pictured those seeds growing into lush green trees, much like the kindness the woman had once received and now wished to pass on to the next generation. Alex's eyes began to brighten, no longer weighed down by doubt or worry. Instead, he felt a resolute belief that kindness held a miraculous power. It not only brought joy to those who received it, but also served as a wellspring of strength and confidence for himself. Looking out the window, the streetlights seemed to shine more vividly, illuminating the path ahead. Alex smiled faintly, his heart swelling with determination. He knew that from this day forward, he didn't just understand the value of kindness. He firmly believed that sowing kindness was the key to building a better world. To himself, Alex silently promised, I will keep doing kind things, not just for others, but to become the best version of myself. Alex Bennett's story is a journey that uncovers the power of kindness. From small yet heartfelt actions, he has proven that kindness is never meaningless. It doesn't just change the lives of others, but also helps us grow and understand the true essence of life. Let's sow kindness to reap love, just as Alex did, inspiring us all. If this story touched your heart, help spread this meaningful message by liking, sharing, and subscribing to join us in more inspirational stories. And most importantly, don't forget to leave a comment below. What thoughts did Alex's story bring to you? Have you ever experienced a moment in your life where an act of kindness made a profound impact on you or others? Share your reflections so we can together spread the seeds of kindness to everyone around us.